welcome to Crime in Court. My name is Heather, and this is a trial rewatch of the 1993 Menendez brothers trial. So I have actually been doing these videos live, and it appears that going live just really sucks a lot of my CPU usage or whatever. It's like draining my laptop for whatever reason, and then I'm having issues and there's a lot of lagging. So I figured let's pre-record these, and I'll join you guys while we re-watch this in the chat. We can talk, and I'll still premiere these on our Tuesdays and Thursdays at our normal time. I took a break this week just because there's so much going on. I'm trying to cover Delphi, Karen Reed, Idaho 4, and Menendez, and Stephen Avery. So there's a lot of trials that I'm concurrently working on. So just letting you guys know, I'm going to try doing these as premieres instead during the day, just because of it takes so much out of my computer, and you'll probably have lagging here too, but at least it'll be a little bit better than when I go live. Because when I go live, I did a video live for Karen Reed, and it was so bad it was unwatchable just because of the lagging. So hopefully going forward we don't have to worry about that if I do these pre-recorded ones. So let me know in the chat if that's if these are okay with you, these pre-recorded. But we'll talk. I'll be there watching them with you. So all right, so let's get started. My dog is not getting settled because today I brought my popcorn. So because this is Jerome Oziel, Dr. Jerome Oziel. I mean, I say that doctor loosely because he did have his license revoked. He also, he was no longer a practicing psychologist shortly after this time period when all this went down with the Menendez brothers. He also was not brought back for the retrial. So if you're unaware, this 1993 Menendez brothers trial goes to deliberation, but it becomes a mistrial because I believe it's because nobody could decide, like they couldn't come to an agreement, which is usually what a mistrial is anyways. So this is the first case or the first trial that we have of the Menendez brothers, and it really does focus a lot on the CA. I can't say those words, but I think you know what I mean. The CA and SA type of things. So we can't really say those words, or I can't anyways. I mean, it's fine for this, but when they say the words on the stand, it's fine, but I can't because I think YouTube does not like that. Anyways, all right, so I'm just rambling on. All right, so let's move on to who you see now in front of me. I can't remember his name. It says it on his placard, but this is the judge in the Menendez brothers trial, and this is going to be Jerome Oziel, Part 5. He is on the stand again. He is Eric Menendez, psychologist. He was before the boys took their parents' lives, and he confided in him about what they had done, but he also told them about the CA and the SA and all that stuff. So the psychologist knew what was going on in the home, but yet still takes the state side and blames the brothers for trying to, I guess, convict the brothers for their crimes. Yes, it's a crime, but do you blame them when you're in the situation that they're in? That's the question here. They did the crime. Yes, they did. Should they get life in prison for it? No. Should they have gotten some time for it? Okay, maybe 5-10 years max. but then they can come out and have a life again. And I mean, I guess because it was so shotguns, whatever. And in the 90s, we didn't understand CA and SA like we do now. So I'm going to shut up and I'm going to let Jerome Oziel entertain us some more. This guy is evasive. He doesn't like to answer questions. He's very problematic in his answers. And it appears that he has maybe a desire to insert himself in this case because he wants the fame or the notoriety or something. I believe he thinks very highly of himself, just from the four other parts that we've watched. So away we go. This is, I believe the state is first asking questions, so this must be like they recalled him to the stand or something. I don't know. Maybe it's in their rebuttal. All of them took place out of order, so I don't really know the orders, like his appearances in court versus like the other witnesses. So there might have been, like, he might have shown up one day and then there was another witness after him. But what the people on this channel did, the Menendez Trials website or YouTube page, they have it broken down in parts by the experts, which I find very helpful. And let's go. Sorry for all the talking.
And would you state your name again for the record, please?
Please hit the like button. Thank you.
Dr. L. Jerome Oziel.
And this will be a redirect examination conducted by Mr. Kuriyama before both juries. Yes.
So he said it's a redirect.
Marked as Exhibit 110. You recognize that?
Yes, I do.
Is that your curriculum vitae?
It's an outdated curriculum vitae, but it is a curriculum vitae. That's
what do you
correct.
use a CV for?
Well, a curriculum vitae is really the statement that somebody who's in an academic profession tends to use to summarize the data that allows someone to know what they've accomplished and achieved in their academic career. That's ordinarily the purpose.
Now, in cross-examination, the defense went over selected parts of your CV with you, correct?
That's correct.
There are parts that they didn't go over.
They didn't go over the vast majority of it.
Okay. For example, you were honorably discharged from the Army in June of 1968.
That's correct.
You received your bachelor's degree in psychology from the University of Washington.
That's correct.
You received your master's in clinical psychology from Xavier University in Ohio.
That's correct.
You received your PhD in clinical psychology in 1972 from Arizona State University at Tempe.
That's correct.
That in 1971-72 you received the Letter of Distinction in Doctoral Comprehensive Examination from Arizona State University.
Yes, I did. I think, as I recall, I received the highest rating or distinction among all doctoral students.
And in 1972 to 1974, you were the assistant professor at the University of South Carolina in their Department of Psychology.
That's correct.
And in 1974, you were the assistant professor at the University of Southern California in the Department of Psychiatry and the Allied and Behavioral Sciences in their School of Medicine.
That's correct.
And in 1980, you were the associate professor of psychiatry, and you were a tenured professor, correct?
Yes, I received tenure at the university.
At the University of Southern California Department of Psychiatry and the Allied Behavioral Sciences.
That's correct, I did.
Now, when you first started to see the defendants in October of 1988, what was the nature of your practice?
The nature of my practice was actually family and relationship therapy, in addition to the treatment of phobias, sexual disorders, and anxiety disorders. But one of my licenses is in marriage, family, and child counseling. And in fact, I co-directed a clinic in the Department of Psychiatry at USC, which was the sex therapy and relationship counseling clinic, which includes family therapy. And I taught and trained psychiatry residents, interns, medical students, nurses, and a number of other professionals, such as social workers and some staff members, in the performance of relationship therapy, in addition to the performance of behavioral therapy in relationship to treating depressions, phobias, obsessive-compulsive disorders, and other anxiety-based disorders.
Generally speaking, as part of your practice then in 1988, did you, as part of your practice, treat adolescents with behavioral problems?
Yes, I did.
Now, is your wife Laurel Oziel?
Yes, she is.
And is she also a psychotherapist?
She is.
And during the period of time of 1988, around 1988, did she share office space with you?
Yes, she did.
How long has she been practicing as a psychotherapist?
This is the first we're hearing about his wife, other than that he was married and he was cheating on her. He had a mistress. This is like the first time we're hearing. This is part 5 of his testimony, and we're just now hearing about his wife. We've heard way more about his mistress at this point.
Approximately the same amount of time as I had.
Now, do you share office space? Do you also share billing, people that do the billing for you?
Yes, we do.
And is she more involved in the billing aspect of your practices?
She's almost totally involved in the billing aspect of my practice. Deals with that with whatever secretary is employed there. I have very little, if anything, to do with it.
With either the billing or the secretaries?
That's correct.
Okay. So your wife is more involved in keeping of the books, etc.?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, recently, were you in the process of moving your residence without telling us where you've moved?
Yes, that's correct.
Have you placed a lot of your records in boxes?
There are a lot of things that we have in boxes that we have not unboxed.
Now, while teaching at the University of Southern California Medical School in the Department of Psychiatry, you indicated that you were a co-director of some clinic?
Several clinics.
Several clinics?
Yes.
What were those clinics?
The clinics were the anxiety disorders and the behavior therapy clinic, and also the sex therapy and relationship therapy clinic. Those are the 2 clinics that I co-directed in the outpatient department of psychiatry at USC.
You've testified from Exhibit 97, some records of billing in this case. And with respect to that, may I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
Actually, what's been marked as Exhibit 97, billing records. Being examined from those records, you indicated that you had contact with Mr. and Mrs. Menendez, that is, Jose and Mary Louise Menendez.
Yes.
What was your impression about Mrs. Menendez in your conversation with her?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to the foundation.
That is,
Sustained.
did you actually see Mrs. Menendez on September 30th, 1988?
I'm sorry, did I see Mr. Menendez?
Mrs. Menendez.
Mrs. Menendez? To the best of my recollection, I did.
So did you see both Mr. and Mrs. Menendez on that day?
To the best of my recollection, I did.
You've testified in cross-examination what your impression was of Mr. Menendez. What was your impression?
Objection, that mistakes the evidence. He's asked whether he liked it.
All right, the objection is overruled.
Did you, all right, did you like Mrs. Menendez?
Yes, I did like Mrs. Menendez.
And what was your impression of Mrs. Menendez?
Objection, Your Honor, on the foundation.
Overruled.
My impression of Mrs. Menendez was that she was a very bright, educated, sophisticated woman who was extremely protective.
Objection, Your Honor. If we're going to get into content, I'd like to be heard.
The objection is sustained. The question relates to the impression he had of her as a person, not any thing she did. Just the impression you had of her as a person, similar to the impression you had of Mr. Menendez that was described by you.
Your Honor,
so the objection is sustained. The answer is stricken.
I'm just asking the court for clarification. In my view, that was part of my impression of her. I'm not sure how to segregate the 2.
All right. Why don't you rephrase the question then?
What impression did you form of Mrs. Menendez based on what you saw of her?
Same objection.
All right. Not in relationship to other people, just as to Mrs. Menendez as a person.
Her individual personality
Yes.
characteristics. Okay. Thank you, Your Honor. That she was very passive and anxious and depressed and just not very efficient or fulfilled as a person. So there was a very big...
I'm going to object to this as expert opinion with no foundation. People have indicated they did not call this one.
So let's not argue the matter. The witness is being asked to give a personal impression of the witness, not as a therapist or a psychologist, just your own personal impression of the witness.
I'll ask another question, Your
All
Honor.
right.
Did you like Mrs. Menendez?
Ask the answer.
Overruled.
Yes, I did.
Now, were Mr. and Mrs. Menendez patients of yours?
No, they were not.
About October of 1988, you started to see the defendants in this case, correct?
That's correct.
And the exhibit that you have in front of you, the billing records, indicate when you first started to see the defendants. Is that correct?
That's correct.
You were asked many questions about that particular exhibit. I'm going to ask you to take a look at the entry for August 18th, 1989.
I have that.
What does that indicate, that entry?
It says, canceled short notice, Eric.
Now, on that day, were you made aware of why the cancellation took place?
No, I was not.
Eric Menendez didn't tell you that he was going to go down to San Diego to buy a shotgun?
Your Honor, that's...
Objection overruled.
Excuse me, may we approach?
Objection overruled.
You may answer, Dr. Oziel.
There's no foundation that he even spoke to Mr. Menendez.
Objection is overruled.
The answer is no. Eric definitely didn't tell me he was going down to San Diego to buy shotguns.
Sometime after August 18th, 1989, did you find out that Mr. and Mrs. Menendez had been killed?
Yes, I did.
And sometime after, well, do you recall when it is that you found out that they had been killed?
I think the first time that I found out they had been killed was actually, I don't know if I was home or phoned home or whatever, but Laurel, my wife, said, my God, you know, I'm just watching TV.
Hearsay.
The question was when or how?
Actually asked when, Your Honor.
Okay.
When?
The objection is sustained. The answer is stricken. The question is when did you find out?
Yes, I believe it was the day that it was reported on the news, whatever date that was.
Sometime on or about August 23rd of 1989, did you have a conversation with Eric Menendez?
Yes, I did.
And what was the nature of that conversation?
Objection, Your Honor. I want the copy, please.
What was the date?
August 23rd, 1989.
We have a foundation to rely on Menendez's testimony. It's not that.
Okay, let's have you approach here and we'll discuss it briefly. All right, let's resume with the redirect examination.
Dr. Oziel, we were talking about the Bel Air Hotel. And when it was that you first had contact with Eric Menendez after the killings of his parents. Do your records, Exhibit 97, indicate that you saw the defendants, both defendants in this case, on August 23rd, 1989?
Yes, they do.
Okay. Now, you were asked in cross-examination why it was that you went to the Bel Air Hotel. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And you were attempting to answer that question, and you were stopped. So I'm going to ask you the question.
All right, let's not re-review rather the testimony. Just ask the question rather than going back on what did or did not happen during the cross-examination.
Very well, Your Honor. Why is it that you went to the Bel Air Hotel?
Eric and Lyle had requested that I come to the Bel Air Hotel to be with them from a professional standpoint, to counsel them and help them out with anything that arose that was emotionally difficult. But the reason specifically I was asked to go to the Bel Air Hotel as opposed to seeing them in my office is because I was told that the Mafia might have a contract on Eric and Lyle, and for their safety it had to be absolutely secret where they were staying, and there was a lot of security about it, and that they couldn't emerge from the Bel Air Hotel to see me in session.
Who is it that gave you that information about the Mafia?
You know, I saw Eric and Lyle the day before, and I don't remember whether it was Eric or Lyle, but I definitely and distinctly remember the content.
It was one of the brothers?
It was one or both of the brothers, but I could not state certainly which it was.
Now, you were asked if you had gone to the memorial services for Mr. and Mrs. Menendez. Did you attend the services?
Yes, I did.
Did you charge the brothers for your attendance at those services?
No, I did not.
And so the charges that were made when you visited the brothers at the Bel Air Hotel was for sessions that you conducted there?
Consultation before or after the services, not to the services.
We'll see about that. I can't
No,
wait
you've
for
testified that-
defense to try to I can't wait for the defense attorneys to dive into that one in cross-examination.
A day or two before you actually saw Eric Menendez on October 31st, 1989, that you received a call from Eric Menendez?
That's correct.
And would you describe for the jurors the nature of that call?
The nature of the call was that Eric called me, seeming very distressed, and said he needed to see me for an extended session, that it was really important that he see me as soon as possible. He told me that he wanted to be absolutely certain that he was the last patient of the day, that there was basically an open-ended amount of time to see him so that he could stay as long as he needed, and that there'd be no other patients present while he was there. And I don't recall, he may have indicated he wanted to go for a walk at some time during the session or wanted to leave the session at some point. That was the conversations I recall it.
And did you schedule him or see to it that he was scheduled for a late appointment on that day?
I did schedule him for the last appointment of that day, did schedule him such that no other patients would be present, and did schedule it open-ended so that I had as much time as possible or as he needed for me to talk with him.
Now, referring to the sessions of October 31st, 1989 and November 2nd, 1989, in which Eric Menendez confessed, and those sessions in which you were threatened, you were asked whether you kept notes at the time that those sessions were occurring, and you indicated that you had not.
Overruled.
Is that correct? You did not take notes during those sessions?
No, I did not take notes during those sessions.
Was there a reason why you didn't take notes while they were confessing and threatening you?
Yes, there was.
Why?
I'm going to object to one of the questions he states.
Objection overruled.
I didn't take notes because I was completely preoccupied with the threat, the trauma, and trying to determine how to cope with the situation that was confronting me.
And
I don't understand why the judge, like, so far he's been really even-handed, and I haven't even, like, you're not supposed to notice if a judge is being biased or being, having any kind of leaning, any kind of inclination to, you know, whether the person is guilty or not. And so far he's been really, really neutral and even, except this video, for instance, he keeps overruling all of the defense's objections. So I don't know why.
you dictated notes about a week later after the November 2nd.
Sustained.
When was it that you dictated these notes?
Sorry.
Between a week and 2 weeks. I can't be certain exactly which day it was. Near the time, if not the time, that I purchased the shotguns.
And you've been testifying with the aid of a 20-page transcript of your verbal notes from that tape?
That's correct.
Now, you were asked in cross-examination about confidentiality, and you were asked why you told the secrets of the brothers. Now, the question that I have for you is it your understanding that, generally speaking, what a patient tells a psychotherapist is privileged under the California Evidence Code 1012?
Yes, that is my understanding.
Now, would it be fair to say that this privilege, however, is not absolute?
Objection, Your Honor. This is leading argumentative. The witness is very important.
All right, the objection is overruled, but if you can refrain from leading the witness.
Is it your understanding that there are exceptions to the privilege?
Yes, it is my understanding there are exceptions to the privilege, a number of them.
Do you know how many exceptions there are to this privilege?
I don't recall the exact number. I don't know if it's 11 or 12, but the most common ones that are used in psychotherapy there are about 4 of them, I guess, that are commonly used.
In particular, the exception that you saw applying in this case was which exception?
Well, the dangerous patient exception.
And what do you know what the evidence code section is for that?
I think that it basically states that in the event that...
No, the question was as to the actual code section number. Is that what you're asking?
Evidence Code 1024. Is that?
And as a psychotherapist, you're familiar with that section?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Yes, I am familiar with the section.
And what is your understanding of that section?
With respect to the dangerous patient exception?
Yes.
Yes, that in the event that a patient is deemed to be dangerous to himself or to others, that there is no confidentiality or privilege. That's the understanding that I have.
Now, after the initial threats in the session with the defendants on October 31st, 1989, would you recount for the jurors what it is you did after the defendants left?
And can you be more specific, counsel?
Did you take measures to protect anyone, including yourself and others?
Yes, I did.
What did you do?
Well, aside from what I've already testified to, namely warning people I thought were in danger, I also tried to arrange for my wife and family to be located somewhere where they would be out of the zone of danger. I tried to arrange for myself and for Ms. Smith to be out of the zone of danger. I took.
So he sends his wife and his kids off to go stay somewhere else. And then he goes and he stays with his mistress. This guy is amazing.
Security precautions around our house, having the security system fixed. I added new security in the form of shatter detectors for the glass in the back of our residence, which we had not previously had installed. I bought, with my wife, 3 shotguns. In addition to that, we hired an armed guard response unit for our home, and several policemen. We called several policemen at some point and just asked them what general protections you could take. They had disclosed things such as, not having people follow behind you and tailgate you and so on and so forth. So I called up and found out what measures you could take if you thought that there was any danger involved with you. So I did that.
This guy was so scared of them that he had hired bodyguards. Is that what he said? He hired like on-site security and then talked to the police about it. But nothing, there were no, I don't know what he just said.
That as well.
Talked to the police about what?
We called several policemen at some point and just asked them what general protections you could take. They had disclosed things such as, not having people follow behind you and tailgate you and so on and so forth. So I called up and found out what measures you could take if you thought that there was any danger involved with you. So I did that as well. And
why would he call the police and ask about how to protect himself from dangerous people, yet he doesn't report that there's an incident and that he was threatened and that he's scared? I don't believe that he was threatened or scared. I don't believe he was scared. If he was threatened, I don't know, but I don't believe he was scared.
Those are pretty much some of the precautions that I took, make sure I was out of town for some significant part of time when I thought that I was in danger, threatened. There were a lot of I called a number of people and asked them for advice. A lot of different things that I did.
Now, with respect to immediately after the defendants had left, after the threats were made, and after you learned of the confession, you indicated that you called certain people, correct?
That's correct.
And one you indicated was a Dr. Lulo.
That's correct.
Yeah. Dr. Lulo is also a psychotherapist?
Yes, he is.
Psychologist? And did you get certain advice from Dr. Lulo?
Yes, I did.
And had you known Dr. Lulo from previous contacts with Dr. Lulo?
Yes, I had.
When were those contacts that you had with him?
I think they were 1986. I can't remember exactly the date.
The defense in cross-examination asked you whether you had been on probation, and you indicated that you had, correct?
That's correct.
Was Dr. Lulo your supervisor for part of the time that you were on probation?
Yes, he was.
Now, would you describe for the jurors why it was that you were on probation?
Yes, I will. In approximately 1981, I believe, a patient that I was treating initially had the funds to be in therapy and was paying my fee in full. At some point during the therapy, he lost his job, and he no longer had any money to afford therapy. And I told him that I wouldn't charge him anything for the therapy since he couldn't afford to come in for therapy. And I continued to see him for some period of time, and he was quite significantly depressed in my clinical judgment. At some point in the therapy, as he became more depressed, he told me that he was uncomfortable not paying me anything for the therapy because he knew that my fee was a significant fee, and he had begun by paying me the fee, and it was not our original agreement that he not pay me a fee, and he felt obligated and uncomfortable and just like it was a big burden. At that point, I suggested that maybe he would want to be referred to another psychotherapist, which I thought would be appropriate if he was having those kinds of feelings. And he said no, he couldn't go through all of this again with someone else. He already had formed a close relationship with me and had already gone through all these things and reached a particular point, and he was too depressed. He just didn't have the energy to continue to start all over again with another therapist. And I told him I was quite concerned that if he didn't get therapy, potentially he could be suicidal, and that I was concerned for his welfare. And he suggested to me that the only way he would feel comfortable continuing to see me in therapy at all was if, in fact, I allowed him to do something, since he had no money, to feel like he was in some way paying something for the therapy that he was receiving. It was his suggestion that he do some handyman work around the house so that he would feel like he was at least paying something for his therapy. And I agreed that in order to have him continue in therapy, and continued to receive treatment, I agreed to have him perform some handyman work around the house, which was, in terms of the value of the work, it was a tiny fraction of what my fee was. So there was definitely no attempt to exploit him at all. I was just trying to help him. But the bottom line is that he did perform some work. I was not supervising him or involved with the work. And at some point, he later saw another therapist who, upon hearing that took place, concluded that it was a technical infraction in relationship to the ethical code for psychologists, made a complaint with the board. I stipulated that, in fact, that was a technical violation with the board, although I made it quite clear that I was attempting to help the patient. It was because I feared that he might be suicidal or not receive any help if I didn't engage in that agreement. The board so stipulated that, in fact, I was trying to help the patient, not harm him, but that it was a technical violation of the ethical code, and that is, in fact, that's the probation, and that's the event, and that was, I guess, about 12 years ago, and that's the only...
I don't know if I believe his version of how things happened. He was on probation for exchanging his services for other services, which we do know there was a handyman involved. So that's the patient he's talking about. But he's also had other issues with female patients coming up, and yeah, he later did get his license revoked.
Now, what period of probation was imposed?
I think there's a standard period of probation, which is 5 years for any, if you're ever put on probation, it's 5 years.
What period of time did that cover?
Well, let's see. The event occurred in 1981. I don't think that the probation occurred until 1985 or 6 or something like that. It took a very long time for them to...
Now, when did the probation end?
It ended, I don't know if it was last year or a year and a half ago. I don't recall when it ended, but it ended some time ago.
So during the period of time that you saw these defendants, October of 1988 through about February of 90, you were on probation?
I was on probation, yes.
Now, the defense asked you in cross-examination whether you disclosed your being on probation to all your patients during that period of time. Is there any requirement that you advise the patients that you're on probation?
Absolutely not.
Okay.
No requirement whatsoever to advise anybody that you're on probation.
Now, after talking to Dr. Lulo and getting advice from Dr. Lulo, you indicated that you had tried to reach your attorney, Brad Brunon, but you weren't sure whether or not you had contacted him. And is that correct?
That's correct.
At some point, you did contact him.
Yes, I did.
And do you recall approximately how much later, if not that night?
Could have been that night. Definitely would have been either that night or within a day, I would guess.
Did you disclose to your attorney that you had been threatened?
Yes, I did.
And did you disclose to your attorney that patients had confessed to murders to you?
Yes, I did.
Did Brad Brunon, your attorney, give you any advice on what to do at that point?
Yes, he gave me some elaborate advice.
What did he tell you?
Objection, please.
Overrule.
Well, first he told me that he was scared to death by what I just told him. He said he was really frightened. He told me that he was a criminal law attorney, and
I'm going to object to this.
All right, the question was advice. What advice?
what advice did he give me?
Move to strike the previous sentence.
That portion of the answer will be stricken. Let's start over again. The question was what advice was given to you?
Thank you, Your Honor. The advice given to me was that he couldn't be sure what to advise me because he said the situation that I described seemed like a no-win situation and a no-way-to-be-safe situation.
Let me ask you this, Dr. Oziel.
Yes.
Did you give your attorney...
Strike that it's not responsive to the question of what advice.
Overrule. The answer will stand.
Dr. Oziel, did you give your attorney, Mr. Brunon, some information, some particulars about the nature of the statements that were made to you?
Yes, I did.
What did you indicate to him?
Objection, hearsay.
Overruled.
I indicated to him that there were
At
statements...
this point, we would assert the privilege. He has no right to do this.
Counsel, do you want to argue the matter?
Yes.
Okay, you may come up here and we can have a discussion.
I'm glad I looked. I gotta always look at my mic and make sure that it's working. All right, so because I mute myself. All right, so while they are doing their thing, I'm gonna refresh our memory on who Jerome Oziel is. So he was accused by a state panel of breaking confidentiality rules and having sex with female patients. He surrendered his license in California to the California Board of Psychology, 1997. So just a few years after this trial. As part of the deal, he admitted no wrongdoing. He agreed to the arrangement because he no longer lived in California at the time and had not practiced psychology for a few years prior to that. So, oh yeah, he's also like a sex therapist. Any kind of like sex-related disorders or whatever, like that's his specialty with patients. So why is he seeing a 17-year-old boy, or however old Eric is at this point? I don't get it. And he met with Jose and Kitty a few times, he says, but he says they weren't his patients, but he did have sessions with them on a few occasions. So I mean, he had multiple sessions with them, so I don't know. Here it says, when Oziel started seeing Eric Menendez in 1988, his license was already on probationary because of the Board of Psychology found that he engaged in an improper dual relationship, which is what he was just talking about. The guy doing handyman work and stuff like that for him in exchange for therapy. In July of 1993, so when does this trial take place? I'm not sure what month, but it's the same year of this trial. Here, just a few days before Oziel took the stand. So, just before he started, providing witness testimony, he was, sorry, my dog got me all discombobulated because she had to shake the whole thing. All right, so in July, right before he took the stand, the state board alleged that he had allowed his mistress, Judalyn Smith, to surreptitiously listen in on the therapy sessions with the Menendez brothers. The board also alleged that he was willing to allow her to audiotape sessions he had with Menendez brothers and make copies of those tapes, and that he improperly gave her prescription drugs and assaulted her. The state board further accused Oziel of engaging in a sexual relationship with another woman who served as a babysitter, of improperly giving her prescription medicine, and of assaulting her. At the end of the Menendez trial, prosecutors did not put Oziel on the stand, or at the second trial, prosecutors did not call Jerome Oziel. I would have called him as my witness for defense. He's a great witness for the defense. Anyways, continuing on.
Or better than that, ladies and gentlemen, it's about 2 minutes to the hour, so let's let you get on your way for lunch and come back at 1:30. Don't discuss this case with anyone or form any final opinions about it. We'll see both juries back here at 1:30.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Oziel, I believe we're at the point where you were discussing what the brothers had told you to your attorney, Brad Brunon, on the night of October 31st, 1989. Recall that?
You're saying what the brothers had told me. I was relaying the conversation to Mr. Brunon. Could you repeat the question?
The question is, what did you tell Brad Brunon when you called him after the session that you had with the defendants in this case on October 31st of 1989? I
believe that I told him that that I had a patient or patients who had committed a murder, that there had been a number of threats to me in the session, that I was, to the best of my knowledge, the only person who knew of the commission of the murder, and that the threats were related to the fact that now that I knew that there was basically no way that the people who committed the murder could feel safe as long as I was alive, that was the thrust of what I felt was communicated to me. And I told him I felt I was imminently under threat of being killed, and I didn't know what to do in terms of options. And he then asked me, as I recall, whether there was other evidence that related to the commission of the crime. And I said no. As a matter of fact, specific statements made to me is that there was no other evidence as to the commission of the crime. That I went through the information about there being no fingerprints, well, the fingerprints being theirs, but they lived in the house, that the weapons were removed, there were no casings, no one apparently had heard anything, no one apparently had seen anything, and what was relayed to me is that at this particular point, with the exception of my knowledge of it, and also that the people were not under suspicion at all, with the exception of my knowledge of it, that there would be no evidence linking them, and he, I think, began discussing how that was a very scary scenario. That was very frightening.
Did you indicate to Mr. Brunon that the brothers had used false identification in the purchase of the shotguns?
Yeah, I don't remember if I relayed that information or if I didn't, but I did tell him that the weapons were not in evidence and they probably weren't going to be found. And he just said that that's very frightening. And I said something like, I'm really trying to, I want to help them, if I could help them, and continue to act as a therapist. On the other hand, I'm really afraid that I and other people might be killed, and I'm not sure what to do. And so I'm coming to you for advice. And his response was that it was like almost an impossible situation. He said that if in fact I went to the police and turned them in, with his experience as a criminal law attorney, that based upon the evidence that I said was existent, that it was at best the flip of a coin whether they would ever be convicted. And he didn't even know how long they'd be held if in fact that there was no evidence other than my saying that they said this to me. And he said, with the people that you've described, if you turn them in and they get let out, he said, I'm certainly not willing to advise you to do that because there's an unacceptably high risk that you'll be killed. And he said, on the other hand, he said, if you try to continue treating them, he said, I can't warrant that you won't be killed either. And he said, in addition to that, he said, I can't even suggest to you that you join or become a part of the witness protection program. And the reason for that is he said, the witness protection program is something where you have a whole new identity, and maybe you'd move to another city, no one would know who you were, where you were. He said, it's just not something that's even viable. It's not even something you could do. You have a lot of ties to this community. You're professional in the community, so on and so forth. I mean, it's just not viable at all. And he said, on top of all that, a lot of people in the witness protection program get killed. He says it's a little known fact that.
I don't believe this at all. They would not put him in witness protection. Sorry I didn't put the captions up until now. Yeah, no, I'm sorry, but they will not put you in witness protection just because you're scared of a couple teenage boys.
Many people in the witness protection program, in fact, are killed. So he said, I don't really know what to advise you. Really, what I need to tell you is that, I don't see a real good choice. I don't see a real good set of options.
I feel like he's just making stuff up. He wants to make himself the center of this story. He wants to be a part of it. And I feel like this is all made up. It's just BS.
Options for you under these circumstances. He said, I'm not comfortable under the circumstances advising you to do one thing or another. You have to use your best judgment.
You had to make a lot of quick decisions that night, I take it.
Yes, I would say so. I would say that within about 10 minutes I had to make all the things that we're talking about or have been talking about over all this time. I really just had from the end of the session to 10 or 15 minutes afterwards to try to assimilate everything that had happened and to try to make decisions about what to do to try and act to protect people who were potentially going to be harmed, and also to try to protect my patients and not go to the police if in fact there was a way to try to lessen the threat such that I didn't have to go to the police.
Do you know where Brad Brunon's office was on October 31st, 1989?
To the best of my belief, it was in Santa Monica, but I don't recall he's moved one or two times.
Now, do you recall the exact sequence of the calls? You indicated that the call was made to Dr. Lulo, a call was made to your attorney, Brad Brunon. You also indicated in cross-examination, I believe, that you called your wife.
That's correct.
Do you remember the sequence of the calls?
No, I really don't remember the sequence.
With respect to the call to your wife, you indicated when counsel for the defense brought up some phone records that there appeared not to have been a notation or a record of a call from your office to your home at that time, I believe, if I'm right, is Sherman Oaks?
That's correct.
You indicated, or is that a toll call from your business phone?
No, it is not a toll call, to the best of my knowledge.
In fact, you checked the records that were presented to you by defense counsel, and you reviewed those records, and there wasn't one call to your residence. Is that correct?
No, there wasn't, despite the fact that I called my residence from my office, anywhere from several times a day to 20 times a day.
Okay, so Beverly Hills to Sherman Oaks.
That's correct.
Now, at some point, you did reach your wife, correct?
That's correct.
And you told her to leave the house with your children?
I did.
And sometime later, you went to your girlfriend's house, Julian Smith.
That's correct.
Would you describe what you did after making the calls that you made that night, and describe for the jurors what you did when you exited your office?
Well, when I exited the office, best my recollection, I think I went down and asked for a security guard to escort me to my car, as I recall. And then what I did is, after I got in the car, I backed out and drove around and saw whether, in fact, the Jeep was still there, parked there. And it was not parked there. And at that point, I recall having driven to Julian Smith's house.
As you were driving, did you ever check in your rearview mirror to see if they were following you or anything like that?
The best of my recollection, I did a couple of times check in my rearview mirror. Pretty much had the belief at that moment that they were not following me to her house.
Okay. About how far was Julian Smith's residence from where you were in Beverly Hills?
Only about 10 minutes.
Okay. Now, that night when you got to Julian Smith's home, did you then warn her about what the brothers had told you and how they had threatened you?
Yes, actually, I disclosed.
I'm objecting to the word David, but not testimony that North Carolina threatened to
Objection overruled. The answer is yes. Your next question.
Yes.
And what warning did you give to Julian Smith, if you recall?
The best of my recollection, since she had no knowledge at all about the situation, I described the situation of two patients of mine having murdered their parents, and that I felt that I was imminently at risk, and I also thought that she was at risk, and that my wife and children were at risk, and that I thought that they, if they hadn't followed me, that they could detect our relationship. And I, offered to her at that time and suggested at that time that maybe she would want to be apart from me, or that, if she felt safer, she could choose to be with me, whatever she wanted to do. I also told her some of the details of the sequencing, including the fact that Eric had come in first, that Lyle had come in second. Told her that afterwards I had made some calls to the police and to Dr. Lulo, so on and so forth, and that I then had gone down and gotten escorted to the car, and that, that's what had happened. And I told her something about the nature of the kind of issues that involved the commission of the murder to begin with, and I also characterized something about how dangerous I thought the clients or my patients might be, and the nature of the crime that was committed, so that she'd be able to accurately assess the amount of danger that she was in.
Eric Menendez knew where you lived, correct?
That's correct.
After you had asked your wife and children to leave your house, you indicated that there was a chance of the defendants breaking into your house. Is that correct?
I was very concerned, because they knew where I lived, that they might break into my house that night, number one, to attempt to kill me, and number two, to try to look for any information that related to any other people who might have access to information about them. So for both reasons, I was concerned about them breaking into my house.
And you had indicated that there were some records of business, transactions or potential transactions that you would have with Julian Smith in your home. Some plans, I
That's correct.
Julian Smith had some kind of a sound and light business, is that correct?
Yes, she did.
And when is it that she first contacted you?
I think it was in June of 1989.
And was it a business offer that she related to you in that first conversation that you had with her?
Well, I'm going to object to meeting.
Objection is sustained.
What was your first contact with Julian Smith?
The first contact with Julian Smith was simply her calling and asking me about whether I had any tapes. She mentioned something about a tape called Through the Briar Patch or something, and asked whether I had any tapes in relationship to phobias, that she was planning to put out a line of tape recordings on psychological topics, educational things of that nature, and she was particularly interested in phobias and the treatment of phobias. And I told her I didn't know anything about that tape, hadn't heard of it. And then she asked me whether that was my specialty, and I said, yes, it was. And she said, well, have you ever done any teaching or lecturing or anything that would give you any authority in that field to do some tapes in that area? And I said, yes. So she basically proposed that we, number one, ought to get together to talk about the possibility of doing a line of tapes, with her being the person who did all the tape production and duplication and marketing, and me being the person who put the tapes together. At the same time, she also suggested and told me that she was in the tape duplication business, and that in the event I ever needed any tapes duplicated. She asked me if that could come up. I said yes. Didn't come up often, but it could come up. That she was in that business, and she also worked with strict confidentiality. She said that she had worked for the FBI, and I believe she said the DA's office before, dealing with highly sensitive material, and that she was used to dealing with very confidential material, and she could be relied on to keep it. And then she said she was going to send me a tape or book, I'm not sure what she said, in the next couple of days, and she wanted to get my reaction after I listened to it. And could I call her back and let her know what my reaction was?
Okay, before we get to that, you had testified that you don't recall Judalon Smith being at your office on October 31st, 1989. Is that correct?
That's correct.
But you testified that you remember her being at your office on November 2nd, 1989.
Yes, she did come against my my instructions to her.
So this November 2nd, 1989 was after you had warned her about the danger of the defendants.
Yes. At some point, she brought a gun in, I think. I don't know when that was.
Now, are you aware that Judalon Smith claims to have actually heard the brothers confess and threaten to kill you?
Objection, Your Honor, it's hearsay.
Are you offering this for the truth?
No.
Objection overruled.
I'm
As
aware.
far as the question is concerned, are you aware of that?
Yes, apologize, Your Honor. Yes, I am aware of it.
Okay. Do you know whether on November 2nd, 1989, whether she actually heard anything that the brothers said that day to you?
No, I don't. It would be the best of my belief that unless something very unusual happened that she couldn't have heard, because from the waiting room, I don't believe it's possible to hear anything that someone's saying in my inner consultation office, but I don't, the answer is I don't know. I can't be certain.
Okay. Now, you indicated that Judalon Smith called you about her tape duplication business and offered some of her services in that regard.
That's correct.
Did she mention to you any other people that were involved in these kinds of tapes, kind of self-help tapes?
Yeah, she talked about neurolinguistic programming, and I guess I think she mentioned Tony Robbins. And
Now, Tony Robbins is the guy that's on TV with Fran
Your Honor, I would
Tarkington.
object to this as irrelevant.
Overruled.
Is it your understanding that this Tony Robbins, who's on TV and he pushes his tapes, is always on TV with Fran Tarkington? Is that the person that you understood her to be talking about?
I don't know anything about Fran Tarkington except that he played football, but yes, I know who Tony Robbins is. I mean, I know him from TV.
So she wanted to get into this business relationship with you.
That's correct.
And in fact, according to your CV, you have written textbooks in your field, or a textbook in your field, psychology.
That's correct. I have written a textbook.
And you've written articles in psychology.
Yes, I have.
Your Honor, I object to relevance to this unless it's shown that she had a CV.
Objection overruled.
Now, Dr. Oziel, the defense in cross-examination has asked you whether you were obsessed with Judalon Smith, and you stated that you were not obsessed with her, but rather she was obsessed with you. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Now, you indicated that you met Judalon Smith first. The first contact was that she had contacted you about this business relationship or potential business relationship. Is that right?
That's correct.
And sometime after this June 1989 initial contact with you, did she send you a letter?
Yeah, she did.
Your Honor, I have a 14-page collection of documents stapled, and I have it marked as Exhibit 120.
Exhibit 120.
May I approach the witness?
Yes.
Dr. Oziel, I'm showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 120. Take a look at the first page. Do you recognize what's on that page, sir?
Yes, I do.
And what is it?
Well, it's a business solicitation letter asking me to.
Your Honor, I'd object to the witness characterizing it. Who can read the letter?
Well, objection is sustained in that it goes beyond the question. The answer is non-responsive. The witness said, yes, he is acquainted with the letter.
And do you recall receiving this letter, Dr. Oziel?
Yes, I do.
And do you recognize the writing, the handwritten message on the first page?
Yes, I do.
Whose writing is that?
It belongs to Judalon Smith.
It appears to be dated June 15th, 1989,
That's correct.
with Judalon Smith's business card.
That's correct.
Would you read for the jury what it says?
Yes, it says, "Hi, Jerry. Thank you for your time and consideration. Enclosed is my poetry book as a token. If you don't have your own tape line, you should. And since that is my business, perhaps I could be of some help to you or the center. So please file my business card for future use. Thanks again. All my best, Judalon."
Going to the next page. Is the date of that page August 11th, 1989?
Yes, it is.
And you recognize the writing on that document?
Yes, I do.
And who is that document from?
Judalon Smith.
Now, is that letter, in that letter, does that indicate to you her feelings about you,
Yes, it does.
in which she says, you feel so good, and thanking you for not running in the other direction. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and going to the next letter within this exhibit, do you recognize the writing on that letter?
Yes, I do.
And whose writing is that?
It's Judalon Smith's.
Now, there appears to be a date, 989. Who placed that date there?
I did.
And when did you place that date there?
I don't recall. I think it was just logging the, so I took these out of envelopes, just logging the time that they came in. But I don't recall the exact time I put the date there.
All the other writing is Judalon Smith's writing?
It is.
And you first met Judalon Smith in June of 1989?
That's correct.
Now, with respect to this page, does this letter indicate to you her sentiments about you? In particular, the seed of our love was there long before we met. It's part of life's plan, destiny. I, for one, have been saving up a lot of water, lots of food, lots of love, and I want to nurture this to full bloom. Is that her sentiments to you in that letter?
Yes, it is.
And with respect to the next letter, also dated 1089, and is that also your date up
Yes,
at the upper right-hand corner?
That's correct. I wrote that.
And does Judalon Smith, and do you recognize the writing again?
Yes, I do.
Is that Judalon Smith's writing?
It is.
And does this letter indicate to you that she wants to give you hugs in person rather than phone hugs? She wanted to come to the office to give you hugs, but you didn't want her to. She talks of business things, and she wished you could just come home to her every night and make the magic happen when you're together. Is that right?
That's correct.
Are these some of the indications to you that she felt
Make the magic happen? Okay.
obsessed with you as you testified?
Among many others, yes.
Okay, is this just a sampling of the letters that you received from Judalon Smith?
It's a very small sampling, yes.
Okay. The next page, also dated 1089, is that your date?
Yes, it is.
Is that a letter which indicates, Dearest Jerry, wherein Judalon Smith expresses her desire not to place limits on the relationship? She just wants to love you to the fullest each day and be loved by you. And quote, why do you push my panic button by saying things that are limit-oriented? I'm trying not to drive you crazy. I love you. Do you know how wonderful and thoughtful and fun and loving and special you are? Do you remember getting that letter from Judalon Smith?
Yes, I do.
And with respect to the next letter, dated Monday, October 16th, 1989, it's a 3-page letter.
Yes?
Actually, I'm sorry, a 2-page letter.
2-page letter, yes.
Do you remember seeing this letter?
Yes,
on or
I-
about October 16th.
Yes, I saw it in person.
And with respect to all the writing on this 2-page letter, is that Judalon Smith's writing,
It is.
except for the upper left-hand corner, which I believe you characterized the note?
Yes, that's true. I wrote those 2 words and the box around them.
And it says suicide note,
It does.
in which Judalon Smith leaves you her 2 kitties. Is that right?
I think she requested that I took care of her 2 cats.
Do you know the names of her cats?
Well, they're listed in the letter here.
Did you know before that, though?
Probably at one point I did, but I'd forgotten.
Shanty and Ishi Kitty?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. Now, the next letter appears to be November of 89. And
Can we
here's-
get clarification as to whether he's writing the date on this one?
On which
I'll
one?
ask him that.
The October 89 or
Yes.
oh, I'm sorry.
October the 16th, 1989, is that the one?
November 8th.
Okay.
Okay. With respect to the Monday, October 16th, I believe that is her date. Is that correct, Dr. Oziel?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, the next letter appears to be dated 1187 in the upper right-hand corner. Is that your date on the letter?
7 or 1189?
I'm sorry, 1189.
That's my writing.
Okay. And this is a 3-page letter?
Looks to be, yes.
And did you receive this from Judalon Smith in November of 1989?
I did.
And is this her writing in this letter?
Yes, it is.
And basically, in this letter, does it say, you are the kiss of life, I love you, I love being near you, your love pulsates through me, unlocking doors to rooms no one has ever gone. This is timeless love that occurs and reoccurs from lifetime to lifetime. Was that her sentiments in November?
That's what's contained in the letter, right? Yes.
She writes other letters that contain the same sentiments later in November 25th, 1989, is that correct?
That's correct.
And without going through all of this, the next 2 letters after November 25th, 1989 are
Just because she writes him love letters doesn't mean that she's the one obsessively going, obsessive in the relationship. It could just mean, in the beginning she was happy and in love and, in that fun, loving, falling in love stage. And then later, you don't feel that high like you're floating in a cloud anymore, and then your interpretation of things might change a little.
Or a Valentine's card, February 90. Now, with the exception of the 290 in the upper right-hand corner, is all the writing Judah Lon Smith's on that Valentine's card.
It is.
And I'm not going to get into the substance of the last 2 pages that comprise the last letter, but you have a date, I believe, of 290 in the upper right-hand corner. Is that your writing?
That's my writing.
Everything else is at the printing rather than the handwriting of Judah Lon Smith.
Are we on the Valentine's Day letter?
No, this is the one right after the Valentine's
Oh, I'm
Day.
sorry. Yes, that's true. That's the printing of Judah Lon Smith.
Okay, and just basically that last letter indicates, it makes me sad that I sabotaged the most important, loving, giving, caring, and passionate relationship I've ever known. You're a very generous person to call me 14 hours after I've been a total asshole and tell me good things about me, and you believe in me. I hope I don't let that belief down. I want to make you happy. Love and zillions of kisses, Judah Lon. Was that another letter that you received from Judah Lon Smith?
Yes, it is.
Well, sometime after February of 1990, you broke up with Miss Judah Lon Smith. Is that correct?
Well, I've been trying to break up with her all along, but yes, the final incident was sometime immediately after this.
Are the letters that you've just related, among other letters that apparently you've received, are those some of the reasons why you testified in this court that when asked by the defense whether you were the one that was obsessed with Judah Lon Smith, that you said, no, she was obsessed with me? Is that why you said that?
Objection 25.
Objection sustained.
Okay, why is it that
I think they literally, they didn't like that they called out the witness saying he was obsessed with Judah Lon Smith, so the prosecution went through and found all the love letters they could find from Judah Lon and show, like, no, she was in love with him, see? That doesn't mean that he wasn't obsessed with her still.
you testified that you were not obsessed with her, but rather she was obsessed with you?
Well, these letters and the multitudes of other letters that I have in my possession that she sent me, some of which are a lot more extreme than these letters, are only a small part of the whole picture. She also, in person and in phone conversation, was very continuously trying to push and move the relationship towards something that I told her in the very beginning that it couldn't be and that I didn't want it to be, which is the reason she talked about why are you always limit setting and why don't you stop making, I'm trying not to drive you crazy, why do you keep mentioning limits, just let's take things day by day. It's because I was repeatedly telling her that that I didn't want to be in the relationship anymore, and I thought she was getting much too intense and that she was misunderstanding what was happening in the relationship, and I felt I needed to leave the relationship. Each time I told her that, she threatened suicide, and then the one time, the October letter, she actually, I don't know if she set things up or what, but she actually asked me over for a final meeting to give me back the business materials, and when I came in, there was a suicide attempt in progress. So pretty much continued, and that was only several weeks before the 1031 session that Judah Lon Smith had made the suicide attempt. So I was pretty much, after the first couple of months, telling Judah Lon Smith that I needed not to be in this relationship, that it was an error, and that she was not taking it at all in the way that I'd intended it for.
For months and months and months and months and months, as you sleep with her over and over again, but tell her, no, we shouldn't be in a relationship.
To be, and there were limits on it, and in addition to that,
I believe it.
I just felt that the nature of what she was writing, in not only these letters but in many other letters, and the nature of what she was saying. She was frequently trying to press me to not be in my marriage and to be with her, and I was repeatedly telling her that that wasn't at all what this was about, and so on and so forth. And I just, that's the entirety of that is the reason that I felt that she was fixated on me, and she didn't tolerate me breaking up with her.
Now, did Judah Lon Smith know that you were married at the time?
Oh, absolutely. She knew from the very beginning that I was married, yeah.
And did your wife, Laurel, know about Judah Lon?
At some point, yes, she did know about Judah Lon.
And at some point, because of the danger, she actually came to live with you and your wife. Is that correct?
Because of the danger, because Judah Lon Smith stated, number one, she was making some threats.
I'm going to object that the answer is not responsive.
Objection sustained after yes. Everything else is stricken.
Now, at some point, do you recall when you actually broke off the relationship with Judah Lon Smith?
Yes, I do.
When was that?
Can you even imagine that? Your husband tells you, oh, by the way, I have a mistress, and oh, by the way, I have a client who's threatened to kill me, And I'm scared for my mistress's safety, so I'm going to bring her to live with us for a little while. Is that okay, dear? Okay. Can you even imagine that conversation? Like, that woman must be a saint, because I wouldn't be quiet about that.
Well, sometime in early March.
Do you recall having a tape played in which you made calls to her house?
Are you referring to the tape that Mr. Burke played that he was using as, I believe, as evidence that I was obsessed with her or something of that nature?
Yes,
yes.
Evidence. You actually made calls to her residence, is that correct?
Yes, I did make calls to her residence for a specific reason.
What was that?
Well, the reason was I had just basically told her to get out of the house, and knowing her history of having been either suicidal or histrionic, I was concerned. Number one, I was concerned she was going to go to the police, and I was concerned she'd put herself and my family in danger. So that's one concern I had. And the second concern I had was that she might kill herself, and neither one of those was something that I was comfortable with. And so that series of calls that Mr. Burke played were really just completely not representative of what happened in terms of my calling Julian Smith at all. They were simply my calling her at that one moment in time when I was concerned she was either going to go to the police or that she was going to commit suicide. And she had left her car outside with her clothing underneath the car in a bag. And that looked very odd indeed. And I was concerned that, similar to something she'd done before, that maybe she was inside and she was, attempting to commit suicide or something. That's the reason I made those calls.
Now, when you said that you were afraid that she might take the information to the police, were you still operating under the advice given to you by Brad Brunon back in October of 1989 that just with what you had, it was 50-50 as to whether these defendants would be convicted? Were you going on that advice?
Yes, I was. I still did not know anything about there being any other evidence whatsoever in this matter.
And did you feel at that time that if the police were notified and the brothers became aware that you turned over the tapes, that you would be in danger?
Yes, I did. And okay, yes, I did. I'm sorry.
Now, as you've testified, Julian Smith contacted you to offer her services as an audio tape duplicator. In fact, did she duplicate the tapes of the Menendez brothers that were ultimately found in your safety deposit box when the Beverly Hills Police Department served a search warrant on your home and offices on March 8, 1990?
She did.
She duplicated those tapes?
She did duplicate those tapes in my presence.
What purpose? Why? Ask more
Now,
questions.
focusing back on the defendants in this case, you have indicated that you've made the warnings that you made to your wife and family and to
Why didn't he ask more questions about that?
Julian Smith, and you've told Dr. Lulo and your attorney Brad Brunon about what information you had. What do you think you accomplished by telling the defendants that you had notes of the sessions with them and that your attorney was instructed to go to the authorities with the notes or tapes if you were to be killed or murdered or mysteriously disappear? What did you think you accomplished by that?
I object to the that question.
Sustained.
No, he sustained something.
Okay. What did you think that you had protected yourself in any fashion?
Objection.
What time frame are you talking about?
After you recorded your notes, your audio notes of the sessions with the brothers, and you informed them that you had the notes, what do you think you did to protect yourself?
Objection.
Also mistakes there.
Objection sustained.
Dr. Oziel, why don't you explain to the jurors what you did to protect yourself in getting the tapes that you made, or making the tapes of the notes?
Now I'm going to object and ask for a coach.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Oziel, why did you make those tapes? October 31st and November 2nd.
I made the tapes as a way of, well, I made the tapes for a different reason. I'm sorry.
Your Honor, perhaps we should ask the question.
All right. Why were these tapes recorded by him? You're talking about the tape of October 31st and November 2nd, why he recorded them or
Yes.
why he had them duplicated?
Well, I'll do the recorded first, and then I'll get to the second step.
Okay. Now we're talking about October 31st and November the 2nd.
Could you repeat the question?
Why did you record your notes from the October 31st and November 2nd sessions?
For a variety of reasons. Number one, it was important for me to preserve as much detail as was possible to document what had transpired in both of those sessions for therapeutic purposes. It was also very important for me to record what transpired for the purposes of documenting what actions I took from a standpoint of professional responsibility. And third, it was important for me to document what happened and to get the documentation of that into a safe place as a part of a protection or a perceived protection that if in fact there was a follow-through in relationship to murdering me, that the entirety of the details of those two sessions would be revealed as a way of trying to disincentive either Lyle or Eric from killing me.
In fact, the police served a search warrant on your house on March 8, 1990, is that correct?
That's correct.
And were you home at the time that the police served the warrant?
I was not.
Did you get a call from your wife?
I don't recall if I called her or she called me, but we were in contact with each other while I was in the car.
And at some point, did you return to your home and find the Beverly Hills police detectives there?
Yes, I found a number of people there, including Beverly Hills police detectives.
And did you then call your attorney, Brad Brunon?
I did.
At that time, when you saw the police at your house, what was your state of mind with respect to the defendants?
Objection, Oziel.
Could you be more specific as to what you're referring to? Objection
Many
system.
With respect to the threat, your perceived threat, and the danger that the defendants posed, what was your state of mind on March 8, 1990?
I believe that the defendants posed a threat. I was concerned about the fact that these notes were being seized, and I was concerned that if they learned that they were being seized, that they might think that I had simply turned them over or betrayed them to the police, which in fact was not at all what happened.
Did you make any requests of any of the officers there serving the warrant regarding protection?
I believe I did ask for some sort of protection.
What sort of protection did you ask for?
Objection, Oziel.
Overruled.
I think I asked for some police protection.
Was Brad Brunon there at that time?
He was.
Now, at some point, did you or Laurel, your wife, accompany the detectives to the safety deposit box in which these tapes were located?
Both my wife and I accompanied the detectives to the safety deposit box location.
And was there Special Master Gary Mogul there?
There was.
Do you remember whether Detective Zoller was there?
Detective Zoller was there.
Do you recall actually who recovered the actual tapes from the safety deposit box?
My wife did with Mr. Mogul.
After the Special Master Gary Mogul took possession of the tapes, did you become involved in a closed hearing in Santa Monica Superior Court regarding the tapes?
Yes, I did.
Now, there's been a lot of reference to proceedings that occurred in Santa Monica in June and July of 1990. Were you involved and were you a witness in some of those proceedings during that period of time?
I was.
Now, was the privilege issue being litigated in Superior Court at that time?
Objection, Oziel.
Overruled.
At my instigation, I instructed my attorney, Brad Brunon, to litigate the privilege issue, which was not something I was obligated to do.
Objection, move to strike the answer as non-responsive.
All right. The answer will remain except for the last portion regarding whether he was obligated to do that. That portion is stricken as non-responsive.
Dr. Oziel, you were involved in this litigation, is that fair to say?
That's fair to say.
For the next 2.5 years, did that litigation include the Appellate Court of California, 2nd District, and also the Supreme Court?
Yes, it did.
Objection, Oziel.
All right. Objection is sustained. The answer is stricken. Do you want to approach?
Yes.
Okay.
Dr. Oziel, when is it the first time that you spoke to the prosecution in this case about what the defendants had told you? Do you recall?
It was very recent. It was just before my anticipated testimony.
In the grand jury?
Correct.
Do you recall that as being in December of 1992?
I don't recall when it was, but
Getting back to the statements of the defendants on October 31st, 1989, in cross-examination you were asked whether either of the defendants had used the word perfect in describing the murders. Do you recall that?
Misstates the question on both of you.
All right. With the understanding that you're not quoting verbatim, the objection is overruled.
Thank you, Your Honor. Do you recall that?
can you
Oziel?
repeat the question, please?
Yes, in cross-examination, do you recall a question being posed whether the brothers on October 31st used the word perfect murder, perfect crime?
Yes, they did.
Have you had an opportunity to review your notes?
Well, I certainly have, on the witness stand, many times reviewed my notes.
And do you recall now, after a review of your notes, whether or not, in fact, they had referred to the perfect crime during that October 31st session?
Now, I object to use the word they.
Objection overruled.
Yes, the word perfect murder the phrase perfect murder was used during that session.
In cross-examination, you also testified that at one point, Eric Menendez believed or was frightened that they may get caught on that night. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Is that inconsistent with the language of the perfect crime?
Your Honor, I'm going to object to that calling for conclusion.
Sustained.
Could you describe for the jurors how that information came up from Eric Menendez regarding the situation where he had left some cartridges in the car?
Yes. Prior to the actual commission of the murder, there had been a belief that that the brothers had formed a perfect crime, a plan that would not allow for detection. In the actual commission of the crime, both brothers realized that they had not committed a perfect crime in the sense that the way that it was executed involved leaving cartridges in the car. And since the police could easily have found the cartridges, that clearly was an error. And at the moment that that error occurred, it was no longer in the actual enactment a perfect crime. Once they created a reason for going back out to the car, I believe to retrieve tennis garb or tennis gear or something of that nature, and they were allowed to pick up the cartridges. Eric told me that they again felt that they had now a perfect murder because, to his knowledge, that was the only way that he could have been caught that night. Best my recollection. And then later, Lyle in the session related to the fact that Eric disclosed to me, or confessed to me, all of the details of the crime as now returning their situation to one where it was no longer a perfect murder, and the element of it being no longer perfect was the fact that I had a complete confession and had all the information, and at any time, insofar as Lyle was concerned, I could disclose it to anyone, and he related that he did not feel safe at all with that, and that there was no way he could feel safe with that. Even many years from now, I could relate that to somebody else or tip somebody or whatever, and so now I was what was making the murder imperfect, and he was basically alluding to how it was an extremely big problem, and the message I was getting is that he was considering what to do to remove me as a factor, so I no longer could ruin what otherwise would have been a perfect murder.
Your Honor, I don't think all of that was responsive.
I'm sure you can go back and pick it up. Okay, objection is overruled.
Dr. Oziel, after you established this relationship
Look
with
at
the
her
defendant,
face.
that they knew that you had these tapes in the safety deposit box, and you continued to see them after that, is that correct?
Yes, I did.
And the sessions up to October 31st are still privileged, correct?
Yes, they are.
Objection,
Sessions
Your Honor.
after?
Excuse me, counsel. Objection, Your Honor.
Can I have the question read back, please?
Question in
She's had it with this guy. She's getting real annoyed with his
the
questions.
sessions up to October 31st are still privileged, correct?
All right, there's an objection?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay, the objection is sustained. The answer is stricken.
After you established this relationship, that you had told the defendants that you had these tapes in your safety deposit box, was there ever a request on either October 31st or November 2nd by either of the brothers in the other brother's presence for you to put down everything and reflect everything in your notes that would somehow explain their motivation for killing their father?
Yes, Lyle in particular had expressed a desire to record or memorialize all of the factors that were motivation related that had to do with the commission of the murder.
And you've reflected those, or you've related those to the jurors based on your notes for those two sessions?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Yes, based upon my notes and my recollection of those two meetings, I have fundamentally communicated the motivation as it was communicated to me.
I have another exhibit that's comprised of 5 pages. Gun records, may I have this marked as exhibit 121, I think?
121. Yes.
Dr. Oziel, I'm showing you what's been marked as exhibit 121. Do you recognize those documents, sir?
Yes, the top document, and yes, the other documents as well, as I'm looking through them. Yes?
Do those appear to be the gun records reflecting your purchase of 3 shotguns on November 6, 1989?
They do.
Was your wife Laurel Oziel with you on that date?
Yes, she was.
Now, looking at the first page of this 5-page document, is that your writing?
No, that's not my writing.
Okay, but it indicates Leon Jerome Oziel as purchaser?
That's correct.
Is that your signature in the middle section?
That is my signature.
Okay, and with respect to the driver's license, is that your driver's license number?
That is my driver's license number.
And with respect to the Sherman Oaks address, is that your correct address?
That was my correct address at the time.
You moved recently. you
That's
indicated.
true.
Now, you bought the shotgun at the Big Five Sporting Goods shop, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Where was that store located?
It was located it was very close to our home,
And what city was the Big Five located in?
Encino.
And you lived at that point in Sherman Oaks?
That's correct.
And with respect to the next page, actually go 2 pages to where Laurel Oziel is listed.
Yes.
Does that appear to be your wife's signature?
Yes, it does.
And the date is also November 6, 1989?
It is.
And does that appear to be her driver's license number?
It does.
Does that accurately reflect your address at that time?
It does.
And going to the last page, actually the last 2 pages are receipts, is that correct?
Yes, they look to be receipts.
And they're for 2 shotguns.
2 shotguns, yes.
So there was a total of 3 shotguns that were purchased by yourself and your wife?
There were 3.
Now, in your
So
testimony
many.
regarding the October 31st and November 2nd sessions, you indicated that you were aware of some abuse by Jose Menendez. Is that correct?
I was aware of a lot of instances or a lot of characteristics that were abusing, yes.
What in particular were you referring to when you testified to abuse by their father? What kind of abuse? Would you relate that to the jurors?
Yes, I think that the...
Your Honor, I think at this point we probably should refer to the
Is there an objection?
Yes.
All right, you may approach.
And both juries are back, and we'll resume with the examination. Mr. Criella.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Oziel, did either defendant tell you during the sessions of October 31st and November 2nd that they killed their parents due to physical abuse?
No.
Did either defendant ever tell you during the October 31st or November 2nd sessions that they killed their parents due to sexual abuse?
No, they did not.
Did either defendant ever tell you during the October 31st and November 2nd sessions that their parents posed any physical threat to them?
No, they did not.
Did either defendant ever tell you during the October 31st and November 2nd session that they killed their parents in self-defense?
No, they did not.
Thank you. I have nothing further, Your Honor.
Dr. Oziel, both Menendez brothers indicated to you in both sessions that they were suspicious that you were going to not keep the information they were telling to you confidential. Isn't that true?
No, it isn't.
That's not true.
No, it isn't.
And they were not suspicious during either of those 2 sessions.
That wasn't the question you asked, Mr. Burt.
Were they suspicious that you weren't going to keep the information confidential?
The answer is no. You asked whether they were suspicious. The answer is no.
Maybe I should rephrase it. Did they indicate to you that they were afraid that you were going to leak the information that they were giving you to other people?
The answer again is no.
Did
Overruled. The
did
answer will
Lyle
stand.
Menendez indicate to you at either the October 31st or the November 2nd session that what's to the effect of what's going to prevent you from going to the police or other people anonymously?
Yes, he specifically stated that he was fearful that I could and believed that I could anonymously or some other way disclose the information.
And that is something he said to you on October 31st, correct?
It is.
And it was something he said to you in the presence of Eric Menendez, correct?
He did.
All right. Now, I believe you testified on redirect examination that one of the reasons that you recorded the notes was because you thought it was important for you to get documentation in a safe place. Is that one of the reasons you had for recording the notes?
I believe that would be a restatement of what I said.
All right. And is it true that you may not have recorded those notes until March 9th, 1989?
No, that's not true.
Didn't you testify on cross-examination November 9th?
Oh.
Sorry.
November 9th. It's possible that I may not have. I think I said a day or so up to about the point when I purchased the shotguns, which I just see in front of me. The record shows it's November 6th, sometime around November 6th.
All right. So one of the reasons for recording the information was it was important for you to get the documents in a safe place, and yet you may not have recorded those notes until November 9th, 1989, correct?
November 9th, I think, would be the very outside date. I believe they were recorded prior to that, but yes, I believe that's correct.
And as far as getting the documents in a safe place, if you recorded them on or about November 9th, Where is it that you put the documents on or about that date?
In the safe in my house.
All right. And the house was the place that you testified Eric Menendez had been to and knew where you lived, correct?
That's correct.
And as far as you knew, there could have been the ability on their part to come in, break in the house, and get inside your safe, right?
The answer is that was a possibility, but by that time, I did not believe that that was going to occur. That was my fear the first night. I didn't believe at the
So
time of November
ridiculous.
9th that it was likely they were going to break into my house and take the tapes.
When did you decide that that likelihood didn't exist?
I couldn't answer that question.
Just roughly.
I'd be speculating totally. I don't recall the exact moment or anything like the exact moment that I decided that. I think that my fear about them imminently killing me that moment was pretty much October 31st. It diminished to some extent November 2nd when we had the conversation about the notes and the tapes and being in a safety deposit box. And I think after November 2nd, I wasn't as concerned that they were going to break into my house and take things in the house that related to the contents of notes in my house.
So by November 2nd, that fear had diminished? Is that
By November 2nd, the specific fear that they were going to break into my house and rummage through my house to try to find documents had diminished.
And it was sometime after November 2nd that you went to Newport Beach, is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
It would have been the weekend of November 4th, correct?
That's correct.
And you've already told the jury that the reason you went to Newport Beach was because you feared going back to the house, isn't that true?
That's correct.
And that would have been after this November 2nd date where you say your fear had diminished as to their ability to break into your house, correct?
No, I didn't say my fear diminished as to their ability to break into my house, Mr. Burt.
Your fear had diminished about what?
My fear had diminished in relationship to their motivation being the very night they confessed to me, killing me and trying to rummage through my house at the same time. That was I only had 10 minutes to be thinking of these things since after the session I had a period of just a few minutes to make decisions, and that was my feeling that first night. By the time I went to Newport Beach, I just wasn't feeling as concerned that that was the action they were going to take.
Well, but somehow you must have been concerned they were going to take some action that involved breaking into your house, correct?
I was by that time I was much more fearful that they simply would be planning a way to kill me.
Well, you said that you took all these protective measures and you described how you got a security system upgraded, correct?
That's correct.
And that security system wasn't upgraded until November 16th, correct?
You've stated that, and that may be what some record indicates, but I recall that we took measures before November 16th that may not be reflected in whatever record you have.
And if the police department interviewed your security company and they told them that your system was upgraded on November 16th, would that be false?
No, I'm not saying it would be.
Recollection?
No, I'm just saying we may have taken measures that didn't involve having our security company come out, that's all.
And why were you buying the shotguns on November 6th?
For personal protection.
At your home, correct?
That's correct.
And that was on November 6th.
That's correct.
And so at least by November 6th, you must have still feared that there was some idea they were going to come to your house, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And so you kept the tapes in your house on or around November 9th, correct?
That's correct.
And when did you finally remove them from the house?
I don't have any recollection of when they were finally removed from the house.
Well,
I wasn't very concerned about the issue of the tape recording from a standpoint of protection once they were made. Once they were made, Lyle and Eric knew they were made. They weren't protective in relation to being in a safety deposit box or being in my house. It wouldn't have mattered where they were. The point is, Lyle and Eric knew they were made, and the fact of their knowing they were made is what was protective, not where they were stored, Mr. Burke.
now, when did you first tell them that you had notes of that session? The session of October 31st or November 2nd?
May have told Eric something about keeping notes when Eric was there alone on the 31st, told Lyle and Eric about the notes on November 2nd.
And on that date, you also told them that the notes were in a safety deposit box, correct?
That's correct.
And you told them that your attorney had keys to that safe deposit box, correct?
That's correct.
And that was a lie, was it not?
That was a bluff to save my life, yes. If you want to characterize it as a lie, that's fine, Mr. Burke.
Well, you were giving them false information, correct?
It was a bluff. That was false.
And the motivation for giving them false information at that point was to protect yourself.
To save my life, yes. That's correct.
So calling it a bluff as opposed to a lie makes it not a lie? I don't know. He calls it a bluff because he doesn't want it to seem like he's lying. But isn't that the same thing?
In other words, to further what you perceive to be your best interest, you were giving them false information.
My best interest, my family's best interest, other people's best interest, absolutely. In relation to trying to save my life, I did proffer false information.
And how long did you keep the tape inside your home?
I don't recall.
Well, what happened to it next? Where did it next go?
I think it next went, well, first of all, I think I continued to record sessions to say,
Objection, Your Honor.
Let's have the question read back, please.
Question one, what happened to it next? Where did it next go?
Why don't you answer that question? No, you can answer that question.
ultimately, the tape next went to the safety deposit box.
And I think you were shown the safety deposit box indicating that...
Excuse me, correction. I have to correct that. Correct my testimony. I think it went from that location to be duplicated at Smith's duplication facility just temporarily for me to watch her duplicate it. Then, at some point after that, it went to the safety deposit box.
And when was the tape duplicated by Judalon Smith?
I don't recall.
And is it true, based on the entry into the safe deposit box, that you first went there on December 7th, 1989, based on your previous testimony?
Yes, I didn't go there. My wife put the tapes in the safety deposit box.
And do you remember being shown the safety deposit box log,
Yes, I did.
and that the first entry after July of 1989 is December 7th of 89?
I don't recall that, but if you're telling me that, I will accept that that's when it was.
All right. And is it your testimony that you were still in fear of the Menendez brothers on that date?
Yes.
In fact, you, according to your testimony just here today, were still in fear of them on March 8th, 1989, correct?
That's correct.
And
A greatly diminished fear, but it was a fear, yes.
well, do you remember around March 8th, 1989, having a conversation with Judalon Smith?
I'm sure I did, but I don't recall any specific
Do you
conversation.
remember Judalon Smith saying to you in a conversation on or about March 8th, 1989, 1990, Jerry, if those boys aren't caught, they're always going to be out, and they're always going to be a threat. And your answer, Judalon, they're not a threat. They're not a threat. But if you keep stuff about them, you're going to be in the files. You're going to be absolutely documented in the files. Do you remember making that statement to her?
No, I actually don't.
If you made that statement, would that be a false statement on your part?
No, I don't even understand what that statement would mean.
Well,
I don't.
Do you remember threatening to put Judalon's name in a file that you had?
The only thing that I'm aware of is, I mean, first of all, her name already was, as far as I was concerned, something that they could have learned about. But I don't remember the context of this conversation at all. It was 4 years ago, and I think she called me multiple times. I don't recall this particular interaction.
Do you remember telling her that, Judalon, everybody that I believe in any way might know something about this is going in those files? Remember making that statement to her?
No, I don't. But the only one who knew anything about that was, in fact, Judalon.
Can I object to the last part of the question is not responsive?
Objection sustained. The latter portion of the answer is stricken.
And do you remember in that same conversation saying to Judalon Smith, Judalon, what are you going to do with the stuff that you have? Because if you're not going to do anything about it, then you're going to have to go in a file. The first thing I'm going to do tomorrow morning is, if I don't get complete cooperation from you at this point, is create an entire file that documents all the stuff you've done, all the stuff you revealed. And she says, Jerry, this is blackmail. And you say, no, this is not blackmail. And she says, yes, it is. And you say, no, it is not blackmail. And she says, if I don't give you my complete cooperation, you're going to manufacture a file. And you say, no, the file has to do with the people that I suspect. Do you remember making that statement to her?
No, I don't remember making the exact statement, but I know what it refers to, and it doesn't refer to anything that you're alluding to at all.
Your Honor, I'd object and move to strike the non-responsive part of the answer.
Objection overruled. The answer will stand.
Do you remember telling her that you were going to create an entire file that documents all the stuff you've done, all the stuff you revealed?
Yeah.
Vague and irrelevant.
Overruled.
I remember telling her I was going to create a file, but not having to do with what you're alluding to at all.
And do you remember that she was tape recording that conversation you had with her?
I didn't know that she was tape recording it, no. Did you want me to explain what it alluded to?
You can do that and redirect.
Okay.
This guy's blackmailing his mistress. What a piece of shit. This guy is unbelievable. Each episode, or each part, we're on part 5, it's like something else gets revealed. And it gets a little worse every time.
Now, Doctor, with all these protective measures you were taking with regard to your house, did you feel at some point that it was safe to go to the police?
No, well, no, I didn't, and I didn't want to go to the police.
You were shown a bunch of letters that Judalon Smith wrote to you, correct?
That's correct.
And do those letters, in your mind, show that she had certain feelings for you?
Yes, they do.
And do they also, in your mind, conclusively show that you were not obsessed with her?
I don't know that those letters in and of themselves conclusively demonstrate that, but it certainly is true that I was not.
Well, you brought these letters to court, correct?
No, they were requested of me by the district attorney's office.
And was a request to basically bring letters that you thought illustrated the point that she was obsessed with you?
No.
What was the request?
To bring any communications from Judalon Smith that I could find as quickly as I could gather them together.
And you said you had a lot more of them home, but you didn't bring those, and in fact there were some better ones than these, correct?
Sustained.
Did you say that you had other letters at home along the same lines as what these letters were in terms of the themes that are illustrated in the letters?
Yes, I did.
Was there some reason you didn't bring those letters?
Those were brought. It was the decision of the district attorney's office which letters that they were. First of all, it was the decision of the district attorney's office whether to read any letters at all. Not my decision. I didn't suggest that. And secondly, it was up to them which letters they selected to be read or the fact that they were read at all. I had nothing to do with any of that.
And in your mind, do these letters show, as I asked you before, that Judalon Smith had certain feelings toward you?
Yep, ask and answer. I tried.
Well, on the objection that you've stated, the court will overrule the objection on that ground. She's not going to try again, so
No,
go ahead.
Come here. Doctor, did these letters in your mind show that Judalon Smith had certain affectionate feelings toward you?
These letters and all the rest of the letters and all of the context of the entire relationship absolutely demonstrated that she had more than affectionate feelings towards me.
And did they also, in your mind, absolutely show that you were not obsessed with her? Did they bear on that issue at all, in your mind?
I don't think that that those letters specifically demonstrate that, but I'm sure that if Judalon Smith has any letters that demonstrate that I was obsessed with her, I'm sure she'll produce them.
Well, again, they don't bear on that question at all, do they? On your obsession.
I don't know that they do. It's not for me to decide these things.
And the letter, one of the letters is the October '89 letter, which Mr. Kuriyama quoted to you in part, correct?
Which letter was that?
The one that you dated, 1089. Do you have that there in front of you?
No, well, I might. I think there were two 1089 letters, Mr. Burt.
The one that starts 1089, Dearest Jerry, and there's some printing. Let's just see how beautiful we can make it grow. You see that one?
Yes, I do.
And he quoted you the end of that, which says, I'm trying not to drive you crazy and to grow emotionally myself, correct?
Yes, you did.
And then he quoted, I love you. Do you know how wonderful and thoughtful and fun and loving and special you are? Do you remember him quoting that to you?
Yes, I do.
He left out a paragraph, didn't he? In between the portion he quoted and the last portion?
Yes, he did.
Read to the jury the part he left out.
There are some days I could just park a well-fed pigeon right over your head a la Larson.
And do you know what that has reference to?
I can make a wild speculation, Mr. Burt.
And you say during that entire period of time, from the time you met her basically until the time when the police, when she moved out of your house, you were trying to get away from her, correct?
I don't believe that was my testimony.
Well, was your testimony that you've been trying to break away from her all along? Do you remember saying that?
Yes, all along, if I were to clarify that, I definitely wouldn't say I was trying to break away from her from the first day or first week or first month. What I really meant is after I decided that this was getting out of hand in relationship to anything that I thought I was ever communicating to her, from that point on, I was trying to find ways to break off the relationship. So I would say that from several months into the relationship through the end of the relationship, I was at different points trying to break off the relationship.
And you also said she was pressing you not to be in your marriage and basically bringing a lot of pressure to bear on you, correct?
Very frequently and very repeatedly.
And you also said, both here today and yesterday in cross-examination, she was fixated on you, correct?
I think that's, I don't know if that was a term that was in the press conference, but yes, I believe that she was extremely attached to me. Maybe
and you categorically denied that you were pursuing her in any way, correct?
I don't know that I categorically denied that I had any role at all in there being a relationship. I think that would be an untrue statement, and that's not usually how relationships are formed. What I was testifying to is that I was not pursuing her initially or trying to get a more committed relationship with her in any way. As a matter of fact, I wanted a very limited relationship with her and thought that's what I was communicating.
So now it's a limited relationship versus a I've been trying to break up with her for this whole time. It's a limited relationship because he doesn't want any of the drama. He just wants to have sex with her and leave when he's ready to leave. That's pretty much what he wants from her.
And she tried to take the relationship and bring it into an area or a level of commitment or involvement that I absolutely didn't want. That's what I meant to testify to.
And when I was asking you about all those phone calls you made, you were trying to make the point that she was the one who was actually causing you to make those phone calls. Isn't that true?
No, no one caused me to make the phone calls. What I was trying to testify to is very simply the fact that...
I object to all the rest is not this point. I think that we-
Objection sustained. If you could just confine your objection to the legal basis for your objection. All right, your next question, please.
You were explaining when I asked you about those letters, and excuse me, the could I have one minute?
Certainly.
Here's yesterday.
I was asking you about the phone records. This is at page 64. $10,069. You said, Dr. Oziel, one of the reasons I was making all of these telephone calls, or a lot of them, had to do with Judalon Smith obsessively calling me and wanting reassurance and trying to elicit me calling her. And in addition, she couldn't call me at my home, so she asked me to call her very frequently. So it was at her request that I made these phone calls. Do you remember that?
If that's what I testified to, I shouldn't have said obsessively calling me, because the fact is that I had an agreement with her not to call me because she only could have called me at my answering service, where she wouldn't have been able to leave me any message in any event, or at my home, which I specifically instructed her not to call. But other than that, I think the answer is correct.
Well, that's false testimony because you did tell her to call you at your home. Did you not?
Sustained.
Is that false?
Rephrase the question.
Is it false testimony? Didn't you in fact tell her to call you at your home?
I don't recall having told her to call me at my home, and I think she called me at my home a total of maybe once or twice throughout the course of the, or several times throughout the course of the relationship. So I don't recall that. I'm not saying it's false or not false. I don't remember it.
Well, do you remember?
This guy has been impeached more times than I can even count. It's ridiculous. He's such a liar.
Remember on calling her up and you saying on her telephone answering machine, "Are you there? And I'm just getting ready to leave in about 10 minutes. So if you can call me by 7:10 or something like that, we could talk. Otherwise, we won't catch each other, and you'd have to call me at home." Do you remember making that statement on a tape?
Objection made.
Yes, can you be a little more specific?
Yes, in March. Do you remember that?
Oh, in March. By March, that would have had a completely different meaning altogether, Mr. Burt. That would have had to do with the whole situation of her turning in tapes to the police department by March, and by March he'd already been in my home. So that's I think that's again a distortion that completely misleads people in relationship to what occurred.
So would it be fair? I don't have objection to that answer. So would it be fair to say?
Wait. We have one objecting, the other not objecting.
I would draw the objection and let
All right.
Mr. McGuire do it.
All right, the
would
objection
it
is
be-
overruled, and the answer will stand.
Would it be fair to say that your relationship changed in that regard? In other words, around March, there was more free-flowing communication between the two of you in terms of your ability, her ability to call you at home and your ability to call her back in the presence of your wife.
I would say that would be true.
Okay. And would it also be fair to say that in the early part of the relationship, that is from June of '89 forward, that if you look at that time period, June '89, say to December '89, that she was the one who was being obsessive with you?
Yes, she was being obsessive with me, but not relating to phone calls as any sort of a way of describing obsession at all. I think it's completely misleading.
And I think what you described for the jury on numerous occasions is during the period between June of '89 and December '89, your basic stance was one of trying to get away from this woman.
No, that misstates my testimony.
Well, what is your testimony in that
That
regard?
I believe
is
I
what he
just
said.
testified that it wasn't from the beginning of the relationship in June that I was trying to get away. I think I said that beginning several months into the relationship, sometime I believe in maybe September, I began telling her that I thought this was not a good idea, that we should never have moved it from a business relationship into a personal relationship, that she was responding much too seriously to it in terms of wanting something out of it that wasn't going to happen. And from that moment on, that's the basic stance that I had with her, and I did try to sever the relationship altogether on numerous occasions, and her typical response to that was to threaten suicide. And on in one event, she actually did ask me over for a meeting at a time when she had actually made a suicide attempt or gesture. I don't know which it was, but she definitely was in the process of looking like she was attempting suicide at the time that she called me over to her place.
And when were you attempting to break it off in terms of time period?
I think I've just testified to that.
Could you, around September?
Around September, certainly, from sometime in September and October is the time that I recall having.
All right, Mr. Burt?
Doctor, do you have that document in front of you, which is the June letter from Judalon Smith, the business letter regarding her tape business?
Yes, I do.
And what is the date of that letter?
That letter is dated June 15th, 1989.
And to your mind, was that letter brought up or brought in by you to show that you had a business relationship with her?
No, as I told you, the district attorney's office asked me to bring in whatever documents I had around, so I didn't bring any letter in for any particular purpose. I brought them all into the district attorney's office, and they decided what to do with them, if anything.
Well, that's a letter you released to the press during your press conference in September of 1990, isn't that true?
Yes, I believe it is.
And what was the purpose of releasing it to the press in September of 1990?
To establish that she had solicited me for business purposes.
And to establish that your relationship was a business one.
Was in part a business one, yes.
Well, you represented in that press alert, that media alert in September, that your relationship was strictly professional, did you not?
No, I don't believe I did.
Well, did you represent that you were involved with her romantically?
I don't know or recall what the press release said or press conference said, but I don't recall it having said that I only had a business relationship with her and didn't have any personal relationship with her.
Did you say in your press release in September of 1990, she called me with a straight business proposition to produce a series of behavioral therapy tape cassettes in areas of my expertise?
Mr. Burt, I don't have my press release, so if you could show it to me.
Sure. This is exhibit 150. Bottom of the page.
Okay. Yes, that's what it says.
All right. And it's true, is it not, that shortly after, and you released that letter to the press, that is the June letter, to prove your point that it was a business relationship?
Well, I think the firm that was representing me released the statement to the press to basically respond to a televised segment that had a number of miscommunications or errors in it. So I think it was a clarification, and this was just one part of the clarification.
And it was the firm that released it. You had no responsibility or involvement in that at all? Is that your testimony?
No, I didn't say that. You simply said I released it, and I did not specifically release it.
What you mentioned the firm as having done that, correct?
That's correct. That doesn't mean I had no responsibility for it.
Right.
Didn't state that.
Did you have some responsibility for releasing that letter?
Sure I did.
By the way, I noticed when you were asked to look at those documents on the firearms transaction, you immediately identified your signature, correct?
Yes, I think I did.
Was there some reason why you had trouble recognizing your signature on the letter you wrote to for Judalon Smith yesterday when I asked you whether that was your signature?
Yes, there was.
What was the reason?
It didn't look as much like my signature.
Do you still believe it may not be? Or do
No.
you believe it may not be?
I think I already testified to that, Mr. Burt.
And is it true, Dr. Oziel, that beginning around Judalon Smith's birthday that you started sending letters to her?
I may have sent some letters to her.
And that was shortly, do you know what her birthday was?
No, I don't
Date?
recall.
Is it around July 8th?
May have been.
Right. And did you send her a letter around July 8th, 1989,
I may well have.
expressing to her at that time certain feelings that you had for her,
I may have.
and showing you Exhibit 122, and specifically the first page of that exhibit? Do you recognize the handwriting on that letter?
Yes, I do.
Is that your handwriting?
That's my handwriting.
Is that a letter that you sent to Judalon Smith as a birthday card?
Shall I read it over to determine whether I sent that?
If you could, yes.
Okay.
And that was sent to her on or about July 8th, 89.
That sounds about right.
And you said in the letter in your own handwriting, well, you keep talking about children. You are a new and special friend who feels much, much more familiar than that. I sense your need and ability to care, to be kind, to love. I see you've learned much and are trying to use what you've learned. You are an honest, open, bright, creative, sensitive, and perceptive woman. There's much in you to admire and treasure. Thanks for letting me into your world, and a very happy birthday, Jerry.
That's correct.
And by that time, that is on or about July 8th, 89, had your relationship changed from one of strictly business to something else?
I think that, well, first of all, there certainly was no sexual relationship involved that I can recall at this point at all. I think that, yes, it had. I think that we'd spent a lot of time talking about both business and personal things. She'd shared a lot of feelings with me, and I'd shared a lot of feelings with her. I think I've already testified that for the first several months of the relationship that we had an involvement, and I think I testified that sometime around September, October, I started wanting to break off that involvement. So this would be very consistent with what I've said.
And is the next document in that exhibit also a letter written in your handwriting?
Yes, it is.
Does it say, "Dear Judalon, happy birthday a second time. Just a few things to let you know someone remembered. I wish for you lollipops and roses, real love, peace, freedom from worry, good friends, good health, and all things good on your birthday. You are a survivor, yet you are fragile and delicate. You have strength, yet you are very feminine. You are unique, loving, caring, sensitive, sweet person. Really much too sweet for this world much of the time. You are a part of the universe I've never really appreciated experience before. You are very new for me, and I wish you only love." Signed, Jay.
Yes, there's no date on this. I'm assuming that this relates to some card. I don't know.
Well, it identifies itself
as a birthday.
as a second birthday
Right.
card, right? So you sent her
Second
that
birthday card.
around July 89.
Assuming I wouldn't have sent her one July of 90, yes.
Okay.
That's correct.
Well, did you send her one July 9?
I'm saying, I'm assuming I wouldn't have sent her one July of 90.
And then is it your testimony that your relationship changed after those letters were sent?
No, it's not my testimony that the relationship with her changed immediately after these letters were sent.
Well, sometime around the end of the year, I think you said, was when you were attempting to break it off, right?
Yes, that's correct.
And is there a letter in there dated January 8th, 1990 in your handwriting? January 8th, 1990?
Yes, there is.
You're laughing, aren't you?
I'm laughing because I know the context of this and what happened, and it's very humorous.
Is this whole proceeding humorous to you?
Mr. Burt, I never said that. I'm laughing at the letter, and you asked me if I was laughing at the letter. My response was no. Oh, was yes, I am.
Do you realize in this case that the Menendez brothers faced a death penalty?
Of course.
Argument, Your Honor.
Overall.
Of course I recognize that.
Is there anything funny about this trial itself to you?
Of course there isn't, Mr. Burt.
All right. Is there a letter in your handwriting January 8th, 1990?
Yes, there is.
And is that a poem which you wrote to Judalon Smith at a time which you testified you were trying to break off the relationship?
It wasn't a poem I wrote to Judalon Smith. Judalon Smith repeatedly told me that she'd never received a birthday card in the last 3 years from anyone. She said it would be wonderful to receive one. That's why I sent her two. And she also repeatedly told me that no one had ever written her a poem. And I was in her presence. I don't recall if it was her place of work or whatever. And she said, "Why don't you write me a love poem?" And I said, "What do you want me to do that for?" And she said, "I've never had a love poem in my life." I said, "Well, I really don't write love poems." And she said, "Well, why don't you make one up?" And I said, we had this long conversation about why she wanted me or needed me to write her a love poem. She said, "Because I've never received one before and I want one." I said, "Fine, great, I'll write you a love poem here on the spot." And at that point, I took out a pen and literally within a period of about 10 minutes wrote this out and handed it to her. And that's how she got it. I guarantee you there'll be no letter or stamp or anything associated with this. It was handed to her in her presence within a period of 10 minutes after she requested it.
And you dated that January 8th, 1990, correct?
I suppose I did.
At a time when you say you testified to this jury under oath that you were trying to get away from this woman, correct?
That's correct. My testimony was accurate.
And the last lines of your poem are, "For like a nymph she strides from the forest at daybreak dressed in white, where no other man has truly known her, Judalon."
I can't read all that, but I'll stipulate that probably it says something like that.
Dr. Oziel, you have described your probationary status in 1986, correct?
That's correct.
And you explained to the jury your understanding of the severity and the nature of that particular offense, correct?
That's correct.
And I don't think you explained to them that, in fact, you had 2 licenses that were revoked. Isn't that true?
Well, there were allied licenses when one was not revoked, Mr. Burke.
Oh, you had a clinical psychology license from the Board of Psychology, did you not?
That's correct.
And you also had a separate license at that time, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
And what was the separate license?
Marriage, family, and child counseling license.
And there were actually 2 proceedings pending against you because different agencies handled those licenses. Is that correct?
No, in reality, what happened is that the Marriage, Family, and Child Counseling Board simply handed over the proceeding to the Psychology Board and stipulated that whatever they found the Marriage, Family, and Child Counseling Board would also accept. So they operate in tandem. If there's a claim with respect to one license, then the other board also automatically becomes involved with the same claim.
But there were parallel proceedings?
Not to my knowledge. To my knowledge, the MFCC Board turned over the proceeding to the Psychology Board. I never talked with anybody in any significant way with the Marriage, Family, and Child Counseling Board. They simply referred it over to the Psychology Board.
And Court Day also sued you in a court of law, did he not?
Yes, he did.
And you had a provision in your insurance contract which provided that your insurance company could not settle a lawsuit without your consent. Isn't that true?
I don't know if that's true or not.
Well, in this case, you were consulted before a settlement was reached, correct?
I don't recall. It was a long time ago, but that might have occurred.
And you ended up paying Court Day some money, didn't you?
No, I didn't end up paying Court Day any money.
You had no personal liability. Your insurance company had to pay off. Isn't that true?
The insurance company made some settlement with Court Day.
So basically, it was no monetary consequence to you.
No, it wasn't.
Because your insurance company covered it.
That's correct.
And I think you said that your license, neither one of your licenses was suspended, correct?
No, I didn't say that.
Was either license suspended?
I think they were both suspended for the same period of time.
How long was it suspended for?
I don't recall. I think it was 30 days.
And
All right, state your name again for the record.
Dr. L. Jerome Oziel.
I'll remind you, you're still under oath, and Mr. Birch, you may continue your re-cross-examination.
thank you. Dr. Oziel, yesterday you testified that you had 3 explanations for why you recorded the October 31st and November 2nd sessions on a tape-recorded cassette. Do you recall that testimony?
I recall that I stated that, yes.
All right, and your 3 explanations were that, number 1, that it was important for you to get the details for therapy purposes, correct?
That's one.
And the second one was you wanted to document your actions, I think is the way you phrased it. Do you recall that?
I don't recall if I phrased it that way, but that sounds correct.
What did you mean by that, document your actions?
Just document what happened and what steps I took in terms of dealing with the situation.
For what purpose?
For the purpose of keeping notes of what transpired in the session, what was said, and how I responded to it in my role.
And the third explanation you gave was that it was important for you to get the documents in a safe place. Do you remember that?
I do.
All right. Now, were there also 2 other reasons why you made the tape recording?
I don't know what you're referring to.
Well, did you make the tape recording for the purpose of creating a false record so that you could use the tape to extort money out of the Menendez brothers?
No, Mr. Bird, I did not.
And did you also create a false tape in the sense that you had false information on that tape for the purpose of using the information on that tape to control your wife and your girlfriend?
No, Mr. Bird, I did not.
Now, you testified, I think, under oath in cross-examination with Ms. Abramson. As follows at page 9869, which is volume 63. Sure. Line 17. Member Dr. Oziel testifying, question, and isn't it true that over the course of your relationship with Ms. Smith, you frequently threatened her to control her behavior by telling her, aha, I'm going to tell Eric and Lyle that you know their secret and they'll come kill you. Didn't you do that? And your answer, quite to the contrary. Remember that?
seems like what I testified to, yes.
And is that still your testimony? That is that you did not use the Menendez brothers to threaten and control Judeline Smith?
It would be my testimony that that's absolutely true. At the time that she was threatening to turn in the tapes or disclose to the police about the existence of the tapes, I definitely told her that I thought that that was an error, and I told her that if she turned in the tapes, I was concerned that both her life and my life and the lives of my family would be at peril. So if that's what you're relating to, I definitely told her that throughout that period of time.
Well, was there a period of time where you were telling her that you were going to leave messages for Lyle to come and kill her?
Absolutely not.
You sure of that?
To leave messages for Lyle to come and kill her?
Right.
No, I didn't.
Do you remember an occasion between October 1989 and March 1990 where you and Miss Smith were in her bedroom and you were singing some songs to her in an Elvis Presley imitation voice?
No, I do not.
Do you remember Miss Smith saying to you, in answer to your question, well, who'd you think it came from, Elvis Presley? And Miss Smith saying, yeah, I'm going to write the Inquirer and tell them. And you said that Elvis is alive and singing songs in my bedroom, that's good. They'll put you away in the loony bin for sure. And Smith saying, I'll send them a videotape. And you saying, yeah, right, I'll kill you, or I'll just leave a message for Lyle. Do you remember making that statement?
No, I don't. But if I
Oh my God, and that's so specific. All of that is so specific that no one would make that up. It's so specific. He absolutely did that, I believe.
did, it would have been a joke, but I don't remember making it at all.
So you didn't make it, but if you did make it, it was a joke, is your answer?
No, my answer is I don't recall any of that conversation, but I definitely wouldn't ever have said anything like that had I ever said something like that and meant it seriously. But I don't recall anything having to do with that conversation.
So again, your answer is twofold. You didn't say it, but if you did say it, it was a joke.
Objection, mistake of testimony.
Sustained.
Did you make that statement over the telephone
I don't recall having made that statement at all.
in any way, shape, or form?
No, I could have made it on the telephone. I mean, if I could have, I don't know, if the statement is there somewhere, then, I don't recall it.
In other words, if there's a tape recording with your voice on it, would you agree that you made the statement?
I'd have to hear it, Mr. Burt.
Well, if someone who's familiar with your voice listened to the tape recording and testified to the circumstances under which that tape was made and said, this is Dr. Oziel's voice, would you accept that, or would you say, I never made that statement under any circumstance?
Clerk, pause for speculation.
Sustained.
Is it your testimony that under no circumstances did you make that statement?
It's my testimony, I'm sorry.
Objection, mistake of testimony. Ask me.
Sustained.
Now, Dr. Oziel, I think you testified yesterday that on March 8th, you still believe that the Menendez brothers posed a threat to you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And on that date, did you tell the police who were serving the search warrant at your house that you were the only one threatened by the Menendez brothers?
I don't recall.
If you did say that, was that a true statement?
I think what I was feeling at the moment was that I particularly would be a target. And I don't recall having said it, so I can't speculate as to what I said or why I would have said it. But I can recall that my feeling was that if, in fact, Lyle and Eric felt that I voluntarily turned in the tapes, and they perceived that as a betrayal in the sense that I voluntarily turned them over to the police, that they specifically at that point would have been targeting me and not anyone else.
Well,
I
join.
Objection sustained.
Word salad, man. I mean, he just goes on and on.
The answer is stricken.
My question is,
No wonder there's 6 parts for his testimony, because you constantly have to ask him to just stick to the question that was asked.
Anytime something is stricken, ladies and gentlemen, you are to disregard it, whether it's now or any other time.
Dr. Oziel, let me re-ask the question, which was, if you said to the police on March 8th, 1989, that you were the only one threatened, if you made that statement, was that a true statement?
At that moment, that may have been what I was feeling, and that may have been a true reflection of my feeling at that moment in relationship to the tapes being turned over.
All right. And so would it be fair to say, based on what you just said, that at that moment, that is March 8th, that Miss Smith was no longer in danger?
No, I wouldn't state that.
You wouldn't?
No.
If the statement was, I'm the only one who's in danger, if you made that statement, that would be a true reflection of your feelings, but that would also somehow include Miss Smith in that statement?
No, I think at the moment that that I made the statement, that was my feeling. And so, I mean, if I made that statement, then that must have been my feeling at the moment. I'm not.
And is it your testimony that the next moment, literally the next second, your feelings changed and it was not only you that was threatened, but also somebody else?
I can't really document from moment to moment how my feelings changed 4 years ago. I can tell you that my primary concern at the moment that the police seized the tapes that I had been trying to protect and keep in a safe deposit box and not to turn over to anyone was that Lyle and Eric would conclude that I had turned in the tapes voluntarily to the police, which all along is what I had labored to not do.
All right, so is your answer that your feelings from moment to moment as to who was threatened was changing on March 19th?
I think.
Excuse me, on March 8th.
Yeah, I think my testimony would be at that moment I was in a state of a lot of concern and a lot of fear, and I don't recall what my feelings were from moment to moment 4 years ago. I only recall that I definitely had a significant level of fear at the moment that the police and a number of other people were in my house with a search warrant seizing the materials that I had tried hard to protect and keep secreted all that time.
And were you trying hard on that date, that is March 8th, to keep them secret and protected so that no one else could listen to the October 31st, November 2nd tape?
Yes, I was.
And did you volunteer to anyone that they listened to that particular tape?
No, actually, it was quite the contrary.
In other words, at no point in time did you say to the police, listen to the October 31st, November 2nd tape, or words to that effect?
No, I didn't state that. What occurred is that the police demanded that I play the tapes.
All right, the objection is sustained. The answer no will stand. The rest of the answer is stricken.
Did you volunteer that the police listen to the October 31st, November 2nd tape on March 8th?
Objection irrelevant.
Overruled.
No, I did not volunteer it.
Fine. And on that date, is it true that if you made a statement that I'm the only one threatened, that that statement may not have been accurate as to other moments, other than the moment that you were making that statement?
It may not have been a complete and accurate statement in the midst of my being very fearful about what was going to immediately happen. It was my feeling, is what I was stating.
All right, so it could be you didn't make the statement. If you did make the statement, it only reflected your thoughts at that moment. And if it didn't reflect your thoughts at that moment, then you were fearful, and that's maybe why you made the statement. Would that be a fair summary of all your explanations for that?
I don't know if that's a fair summary or not.
Well, after the emotion of the moment went by on March 8th and the police left your house, did you still think that you were in fear of the Menendez brothers?
Yes.
And did there come a time on or about March 8th, 1990, when you learned that Lyle Menendez had been arrested?
I don't recall when I learned that Lyle had been arrested.
And did you learn at some point that Eric had been arrested?
At some point.
Was that shortly after the police served a search warrant at your home?
I don't recall the time period, but sometime afterwards, yes.
Well, and when you say sometimes, I'm not trying to pin you down to a date, but would you say a couple of days as opposed to maybe 2 weeks later?
I don't recall when they were arrested. I couldn't tell you if it was 2 days or a week. I don't recall.
Did you, after they were arrested, think that you were still in danger of them coming over to your house and killing you after they were in custody?
No, I didn't think that I was in danger of them coming over to my house and killing me.
Did you think Miss Smith was in danger after they were arrested?
Potentially in some danger.
How did you think she was in danger?
Well, the police had told me.
Overruled.
The police had told me that that it was possible that even if the Menendezes were not themselves free, that there were still ways that that I could be harmed, or that that I could be harmed. And I construed that if there were ways that I could be harmed, then maybe there were ways that other people could be harmed.
They didn't specify, though, how that could take place, correct?
Yes, they specified that it could be arranged.
Did they say how it could be arranged?
I don't recall the specifics of it. They simply led me to believe that there were still possibilities. That, as a matter of fact, all I recall is that they led me to believe that there was that possibility.